At a remote gas station on the outskirts of Chicago, what began as a routine stop escalated into a tense encounter when two motorcycle enthusiasts identified a solitary female patron as a potential target for harassment. Unbeknownst to these individuals, the woman in question was acclaimed actress Margot Robbie, and her companion, waiting outside while refueling their vehicle, was none other than Leonardo DiCaprio. The sequence of events that transpired would leave an indelible impression on these two antagonists, culminating in a confrontation they would not soon forget. The incident occurred during a weekend of heightened activity in the entertainment industry. The thoroughfares of Beverly Hills were congested with luxury automobiles, photography professionals competing for optimal positioning, and enthusiasts lining sidewalks adjacent to red carpet events, all hoping to glimpse celebrated personalities. Among the scheduled functions that weekend, a charitable fundraiser in Beverly Hills stood out prominently. The gala was organized to generate financial support for emerging actors and filmmakers. Among the anticipated attendees, Leonardo DiCaprio and Margot Robbie were particularly notable. The original arrangement called for separate arrivals at the function, with standard media interactions and professional obligations. However, hours before the scheduled commencement, Leonardo proposed an alternative approach. Rather than navigating Los Angeles traffic independently, he suggested traveling together via the coastal highway, avoiding urban congestion. The circumstances appeared ideal. Leonardo's crimson Lamborghini traversed the roadway as dusk descended over the ocean, casting amber illumination across the landscape. Momentarily, it was simply a serene journey, a rare interval of tranquility preceding an eventful evening. However, this tranquility would prove temporary. The journey would deviate significantly from expectations, as they had inadvertently attracted attention from individuals with questionable intentions. The red Lamborghini maintained a steady pace along the highway under the Chicago sun, which reflected brilliantly off its polished exterior. Leonardo maintained casual control with one hand on the steering wheel. Margot, positioned in the passenger seat with a relaxed demeanor, turned toward him. "I'm experiencing significant déjà vu at present," Leonardo remarked with a subtle smile. "If you're referencing velocity, it's worth noting that we aren't contending with an imminent vehicular explosion this time," Margot responded. "That's certainly reassuring. And interestingly, I'm the one operating the vehicle on this occasion." Margot raised an eyebrow quizzically. "Which prompts me to wonder if your driving proficiency has improved since our previous collaboration." Leonardo feigned offense. "Are you implying I lack driving competence? I distinctly recall that in that particular production, my character assumed control because yours was preoccupied with neutralizing a hostile individual." Leonardo emitted a brief laugh. "At minimum, our current destination is a charitable function. No antagonists in evidence." Margot crossed her arms with an amused expression. "It's unwise to make such declarations prematurely." The roadway extended ahead, unobstructed and peaceful. Suddenly, a warning indicator illuminated on the dashboard: low fuel level. Leonardo frowned slightly, tapping the panel. "Speaking of complications." Margot examined the fuel gauge and laughed. "Don't tell me you neglected to refuel?" Leonardo sighed. "Let's just say I was excessively focused on appreciating the moment." Margot gestured ahead. "Fortunately for you, there's a refueling station immediately ahead." Leonardo followed her indication and identified the only visible gas station. It was an antiquated roadside establishment featuring merely two fuel dispensers, a weathered convenience store, and a flickering neon sign that appeared on the verge of malfunction. The location seemed deserted. Leonardo reduced speed and maneuvered into the station. The Ferrari's engine hummed quietly before deactivation. Margot removed her sunglasses and stretched. "Since we're pausing, I'll acquire some coffee," she stated. Leonardo acknowledged with a nod. "I'll attend to the vehicle. See you inside." Margot exited the vehicle and proceeded toward the convenience store. Leonardo emerged, accessed the fuel tank, and grasped the gas pump. The subtle clicking sound of fuel transfer permeated the quiet atmosphere, and at that moment, they were observed. Leaning against two motorcycles, two men monitored them intently. They wore worn leather jackets, had chains encircling their wrists, and dark sunglasses reflecting the afternoon sunlight. Their appearance was inconsistent with typical travelers. When Margot passed their position, a perceptible shift in atmosphere occurred. The first individual, a large man with a substantial beard and tattooed arms, whistled softly. "Well, well, observe this development." The second, a leaner individual with an asymmetrical smile and gold dental work, leaned forward. Hollywood presence, indeed. An uncommon occurrence in these parts. The larger man maintained visual focus on Margot as she entered the store, seemingly unaware of their attention. However, the two motorcyclists maintained consistent observation. The one with the gold tooth chuckled. "Perhaps we should introduce ourselves," he suggested. The large man smirked and, without hesitation, they began moving toward the store. Little did they realize that by entering that gas station, they had positioned themselves within the purview of two men seeking vulnerable targets. The door to the convenience store closed behind Margot Robbie, accompanied by the metallic bells echo throughout the quiet environment. The establishment was compact and outdated, featuring narrow aisles and a counter showing significant wear. At the rear, an antiquated television displayed a baseball game without audio, while a radio played a slow, melancholic country melody. Margot approached the coffee station with casual confidence, selecting a disposable cup. Outside, Leonardo DiCaprio completed refueling the Ferrari, but his attention was fixed on the store's glass window, and his observations caused concern. The two motorcyclists who had been positioned beside their vehicles were now in motion. The larger individual, bearded with muscular arms adorned with tattoos, moved deliberately, manipulating his knuckles as if time constraints were non-existent. The other, more slender and featuring a gold tooth and asymmetrical smile, kept his hands within his leather jacket pockets. They traversed the parking area with unusual, calculated confidence. Leonardo noted their visual focus on Margot. He observed their brief exchange of knowing smiles before entering. He recognized potential conflict before its initiation. However, he remained stationary, recognizing that observation was sometimes the optimal initial strategy. Margot concentrated on preparing her coffee, tearing open a sugar packet and emptying its contents into her cup. At that moment, she detected footsteps behind her. She frowned slightly and glimpsed the reflection in the coffee machine's glass surface. The two men had positioned themselves nearby. The large individual casually leaned against the counter adjacent to her, as if coincidentally halting there. The other, with the gold tooth, maintained a slightly greater distance, but his gaze remained fixed on her. Margot didn't immediately display discomfort. Accustomed to public recognition, she didn't initially assume negative intentions when the large man spoke. "Well, observe who's present, Hollywood personified," he commented. Margot turned slowly, holding her coffee cup and forcing a polite smile. "Apparently I've been recognized." The slender individual emitted a low chuckle, visually assessing her comprehensively. "What circumstances bring someone of your caliber to this establishment?" Margot noticed they were partially obstructing her exit path. The glass door remained visible but suddenly seemed more distant. She took a measured breath, maintaining composure. "Simply acquiring coffee while my companion refuels outside," she explained. The large man raised an eyebrow. "Left you unaccompanied in here? Seems potentially hazardous." Margot emitted a brief laugh. "I believe I'll manage adequately." She secured a lid for her coffee and prepared to depart. However, the slender motorcyclist adjusted his position, subtly blocking her path. "Departing already? Our conversation has barely commenced," he remarked. Margot maintained a composed expression, though her physical alertness had increased. Outside, Leonardo DiCaprio continued observing through the store's glass window. He noted the motorcyclist's excessive proximity. He recognized Margot's subtle postural shift, indicating her awareness of the situation's nature. However, he remained stationary, wanting confirmation of these individuals' intentions. Margot attempted lateral movement, but the slender motorcyclist mirrored her action, maintaining her confined position. The large man grinned, leaning slightly closer. "You're likely accustomed to discourteous individuals in Hollywood," he suggested. "However, we exemplify genuine gentlemanly behavior in this region." Margot tightened her grip on the coffee container. She now recognized this interaction extended beyond casual conversation. She maintained a calm but assertive vocal tone. "If you genuinely embrace gentlemanly conduct, I'm confident you wouldn't object to allowing my passage," she stated. The slender man broadened his grin. "Certainly, certainly. However, before your departure, perhaps a celebratory toast? We might even escort you to a more entertaining location." Outside, Leonardo's expression hardened. He observed the gold-toothed motorcyclist gesturing expansively while speaking. He noted Margot's backward step, recognizing imminent escalation. He understood these individuals were testing boundaries, and that any attempt by Margot to exit might provoke physical intervention. Leonardo inhaled slowly. The situation's development was now inevitably progressing. Yet he continued to observe, wanting to ascertain the extent of their intentions. The large man crossed his arms, staring at Margot. "Come now, apprehension is unnecessary." The slender one smirked. "We merely seek extended conversation." Margot recognized the necessity for immediate departure. She took another backward step, attempting to position herself advantageously for exit. However, the slender motorcyclist extended his arm and grasped hers. Margot became motionless. At that precise moment, Leonardo DiCaprio moved from his position and began approaching the store, slowly and controlled, but prepared for intervention. The man maintained his grip on Margot's arm and grinned. Outside, Leonardo DiCaprio was already advancing. Upon entering, the situation would undergo significant transformation. The silence within the store seemed unusually oppressive. Margot felt the firm grasp of the slender motorcyclist on her arm. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't vocalize distress or exhibit panic. However, she recognized the immediate necessity for departure. The larger motorcyclist, leaning against the counter, smirked. "What's troubling you? Unappreciative of attention?" The slender motorcyclist slightly intensified his grip, evaluating her reaction. Margot experienced increased heart rate but maintained composure. "I previously stated my need to depart," she reminded him. She retracted her arm, attempting discreet liberation. The motorcyclist persisted momentarily. "Relax, celebrity. We're simply engaging in harmless interaction," he insisted. At that precise moment, the store's entrance swung open, accompanied by the metallic bells echo throughout the space. Leonardo DiCaprio entered with measured, controlled movements. Each step produced slight creaking from the aged wooden flooring. The establishment's tension shifted instantaneously. The store attendant, a slender youth wearing a reversed cap, remained motionless, perceiving the atmospheric alteration. Margot sensed it as well, and significantly, the motorcyclists detected it. The slender motorcyclist continued holding Margot's arm but ceased further movement. Their gaze shifted to Leonardo, who had halted several feet away. The larger motorcyclist uncrossed his arms. Well, he muttered, visually assessing Leonardo comprehensively. Leonardo remained silent. He merely glanced at Margot, confirming her condition. The exchange was rapid and subtle, but Margot comprehended immediately. The slender motorcyclist observed this silent communication and released her arm, though attempting to project continued authority. "You neglected to introduce your companion," he remarked. Leonardo finally broke the silence. His voice maintained calmness but conveyed something that caused even the larger motorcyclist to tense. "You will apologize to her," he stated. The slender motorcyclist squinted slightly. What? Leonardo didn't reiterate. He simply advanced one step, slowly, but sufficiently for both motorcyclists to instinctively retreat marginally. The movement was subtle, but Leonardo detected it, and the motorcyclists recognized his awareness. The larger motorcyclist forced a chuckle. Listen, DiCaprio, we committed no transgression. We were merely engaging in light-hearted interaction. Leonardo maintained focus on the slender individual. Apologize. The store attendant swallowed nervously. Margot remained silent, observing the interaction. The slender motorcyclist forced a smirk. I believe you're interpreting this with excessive seriousness. Relax. Leonardo advanced another step, positioning himself approximately 1 meter distant, sufficiently close for his presence to exert palpable influence. He tilted his head slightly. I don't reiterate statements, he asserted. The slender motorcyclist's smirk dissipated. He glanced at his larger companion, who remained silent, recognizing the altered power dynamic. They were no longer in control. The slender motorcyclist exhaled sharply, then muttered toward Margot, sorry. Margot crossed her arms. That was inadequate. Leonardo raised an eyebrow slightly. The larger motorcyclist clenched his jaw, experiencing emerging humiliation. He looked at Leonardo. Satisfied now? He inquired. Leonardo shrugged. Nearly. The store attendant held his breath. The larger motorcyclist inhaled deeply, then grasped his companion's arm. Let's depart, he instructed. However, before exiting, he glared at Leonardo once more and made a statement that caused Margot to shiver. This situation remains unresolved, he declared. Leonardo maintained his composure without blinking. He simply observed their departure from the store and returned to their motorcycles. The sound of their engines permeated the gas station environment until, eventually, they departed. Margot exhaled extensively, only now acknowledging her previous tension. Leonardo observed her momentarily. Are you unharmed? He inquired. She emitted a partial laugh, still regulating her breathing. Yes, though I hadn't anticipated my coffee acquisition transforming into an action sequence. The store attendant remained stationary, mouth slightly agape. Man, that was extraordinary. Leonardo didn't respond. He continued looking outside. The parking area was now vacant, but something felt incongruous. He understood those motorcyclists weren't likely to accept the outcome without further response. Perhaps this situation remained unresolved. Margot exhaled with relief, but Leonardo maintained his vigilant observation beyond the store. Because intuitively, he recognized this situation remained incomplete. Leonardo exited first, surveying the surroundings. The sun maintained its elevation, and the gas station remained deserted. Suddenly, he paused. Margot noticed his hesitation as she emerged behind him. What's concerning you? Leonardo didn't immediately respond. He continued his environmental assessment. The parking area appeared vacant, but something had changed. Margot followed his visual focus and then observed it as well. One motorcyclist had left an item behind. On the ground, adjacent to the Lamborghini, lay a black motorcycle helmet, carelessly discarded. It hadn't been present previously. Leonardo narrowed his eyes. Margot experienced an unsettling sensation along her spine. Was it inadvertently forgotten? She questioned. Leonardo advanced slowly, examining the object. He didn't retrieve it, merely observed it. It contained nothing, no written communication, no message. However, he didn't require verbal explanation to comprehend its significance. Margot swallowed with difficulty. She wasn't naive, she recognized that leaving such an item was an intentional action, a hostile message. Potentially a trap to evaluate their response. Leonardo finally moved. He disregarded the helmet and opened the vehicle door. "Let's proceed," he directed. Margot didn't debate. She simply entered the vehicle expeditiously. Leonardo conducted a final environmental assessment. Then, without further comment, started the engine. The Lamborghini's powerful acoustic signature disrupted the eerie silence of the gas station. They departed slowly. Behind them, the helmet remained undisturbed, as if someone was monitoring their reaction. They drove silently for several minutes. Then Margot finally spoke. "Do you believe that was deliberate?" she asked. Leonardo maintained visual focus on the road. His voice was calm but resolute. "Yes," he confirmed. Margot ran a hand through her hair, processing the situation. "But why? If they intended harmful action, wouldn't implementation have been simpler at the previous location?" she reasoned. Leonardo grasped the steering wheel more firmly. "Some individuals don't act immediately. They await optimal circumstances," he explained. Margot found this response unsettling. She glanced at the rearview mirror, and at that moment, her emotional state plummeted. Behind them on the road, at a distance, something was approaching rapidly, 2 motorcycles. Margot experienced stomach discomfort observing them. Because now, doubt was eliminated. They were being pursued. The red Lamborghini roared against the heated asphalt highway. The afternoon sun maintained its bright presence in the sky. However, within the vehicle, tension was substantial. Margot examined the rearview mirror, her physical posture rigid. "Leonardo, confirm I'm not imagining this," she requested. Leonardo maintained visual focus on the road but quickly assessed the mirror. And there they were, 2 motorcycles. They weren't approaching rapidly, still maintaining considerable distance. But they were present, following them. The most concerning aspect? They weren't attempting to overtake. They weren't behaving like typical motorcyclists on an open highway. They were matching the Lamborghini's velocity. Leonardo inhaled deeply, evaluating the situation. Excessive acceleration would attract undesirable highway attention. Deceleration might allow the motorcyclists to decrease distance. It was a strategic waiting situation. Leonardo wasn't predisposed to losing such strategic encounters. Margot exhaled slowly. "What do they want?" she questioned. Leonardo didn't respond immediately. He maintained constant vehicle velocity. His eyes never abandoned the mirror. "We remain proximate to urban areas. They won't take action here," he assessed. Margot tensed her fingers on her lap. "And if they wait until we exit the highway?" she posed. Leonardo briefly redirected his gaze toward her. "Then we'll prevent that occurrence," he stated. The highway extended ahead, but soon they would encounter a curve leading to a more isolated region. Leonardo recognized this. He needed immediate strategic decision. In a calculated maneuver, he slightly reduced velocity. He wanted to evaluate the motorcyclists' response. If they simply overtook them, perhaps his concern was excessive. But if they also decelerated? Margot recognized his strategy. She re-examined the mirror, and then observed the motorcyclists reduce speed as well. At precisely the same rate. Margot held her breath. Leonardo maintained neutral facial expression, but now certainty existed. They weren't imagining circumstances. They were being pursued. And now action was necessary. Leonardo increased grip on the steering wheel, preparing. He quickly assessed upcoming road signage. Ahead was a highway exit ramp. A detour leading to smaller roads. Not ideal for reaching the charitable event, but that consideration was now secondary. Margot glanced at him. "You're preparing strategic action, correct?" she asked. Leonardo smiled slightly, not from amusement, but the calm, knowing expression of someone with sufficient experience to remain composed during such situations. "Secure yourself firmly," he instructed. That was his entire communication. Then he changed gears and rotated the steering wheel sharply. The Lamborghini swerved onto the exit ramp, departing the main highway onto a smaller, more secluded road. The tires produced friction noise against the pavement. In the rearview mirror, the motorcyclists reacted instantaneously. They swerved as well, maintaining pursuit. Margot bit her lip. They accepted the bait, she observed. Leonardo maintained visual focus on the road. Now let's determine their commitment level, he stated. The side road was narrower with multiple curves, terrain favorable for motorcycles rather than sports cars. The motorcyclists recognized this advantage and accelerated, decreasing distance. Margot turned her head, looking through the window. The larger motorcyclist maintained position on the right side, dangerously close to the Lamborghini. He wasn't attempting to overtake, merely staring at Leonardo. Leonardo experienced increased heart rate, not from fear, but recognition that retreat was no longer viable. They desired something, and he wasn't prepared to await discovery of their intentions. The slender motorcyclist initiated the first hostile action. He accelerated and positioned himself dangerously close to the vehicle's side. Margot grasped the dashboard, experiencing accelerated heart rate. Leonardo, they're achieving excessive proximity, she warned. Leonardo narrowed his eyes, maintaining composure. Then, in a precise, calculated maneuver, he lightly applied the brakes. The Lamborghini decelerated momentarily. The slender motorcyclist, unprepared for the sudden velocity change, lost equilibrium. His motorcycle wobbled, requiring trajectory correction to prevent skidding. Leonardo utilized this opportunity. He grasped the wheel and navigated a sharp curve without significant deceleration. The vehicle traversed the turn smoothly. However, for the motorcycles, the angle presented greater difficulty at that velocity. The slender motorcyclist fell behind slightly. Margot observed this development and displayed a tense smile. You disrupted his timing, she noted. Leonardo didn't respond verbally. But internally, he recognized the situation remained unresolved. The road continued narrowing, and the motorcyclists weren't retreating. Then the larger one executed an unexpected action. He accessed his jacket pocket and extracted a metallic object. Margot observed this before Leonardo did. Her eyes widened. He's acquired a chain, she reported. Before Leonardo could react, the motorcyclist swung the chain aerially and projected it directly toward the windshield. The chain rotated through the air, targeting the Ferrari's windshield. Leonardo had minimal reaction time, and his subsequent action would significantly alter circumstances. Momentarily, time appeared to decelerate. The chain rotated aerially, heading directly toward the Lamborghini's windshield. Margot held her breath, eyes widened, saying, Leonardo, but he was already responding. With sharp, precise movement, he jerked the steering wheel leftward. The vehicle swerved, and the chain missed the windshield by minimal distance, impacting the asphalt behind them. Margot exhaled sharply, experiencing rapid heart rate. They're completely irrational, she stated. Leonardo maintained focus on the road. Now doubt was eliminated. This wasn't merely pursuit. They were attacking, and he wasn't prepared to await subsequent assault. Leonardo analyzed the situation rapidly. The road was narrow with tight curves. The motorcyclists were pressuring them, awaiting error. But Leonardo wasn't predisposed to errors under pressure. He tensed his jaw and spoke without visual diversion from the road. Secure yourself, Margot, he instructed. She grasped the dashboard firmly. What action are you planning? She inquired. Leonardo inhaled deeply. Reversing roles, he stated. Then, he suddenly released the accelerator. The Lamborghini decelerated abruptly, and the motorcyclists had insufficient reaction time. The larger individual, preparing another action, nearly collided with the vehicle's rear and had to swerve ultimately to avoid impact. The slender motorcyclist also lost equilibrium. This was precisely Leonardo's intention. He had disrupted their rhythm. Now strategic initiative was his. Leonardo changed gears and applied acceleration again. The Lamborghini's engine roared, and now he controlled the pursuit dynamics. The motorcyclists attempted position recovery, but Leonardo prevented this. He executed a calculated maneuver, positioning the vehicle closer to the road's edge, forcing them to disperse. The slender motorcyclist attempted proximity again, but Leonardo angled the steering wheel strategically, generating a substantial dust and gravel cloud. The motorcyclist received facial dust exposure, temporarily impairing vision. That was sufficient. His motorcycle wobbled, requiring deceleration to regain control. Now only one remained. The larger individual demonstrated greater persistence. He accelerated further, positioning himself directly beside the vehicle. Margot observed his expression. It wasn't merely anger, but wounded pride. Men with such characteristics dislike defeat. Leonardo comprehended his intentions. He wasn't merely attempting intimidation but seeking to force Leonardo off the road. However, Leonardo had already formulated strategy. He maintained the Lamborghini's stability, feigning non-response. Then, at the optimal moment, he turned the wheel slightly rightward. It was merely subtle movement, but to the motorcyclist, it appeared aggressive. He instinctively adjusted his handlebars evasively. But his velocity was excessive, and the road unforgiving. His motorcycle swerved, momentarily losing control. 1 second was sufficient for Leonardo's purposes. The motorcyclist attempted equilibrium restoration, but his vehicle contacted the curb edge. The motorcycle experienced violent motion, and the larger individual was forced to brake forcefully to prevent accident. Leonardo didn't hesitate. He maximized acceleration. Margot looked backward. The motorcyclists were increasing distance. They weren't pursuing anymore, they had been defeated. Leonardo maintained high velocity for several additional miles. Margot continued monitoring the mirror, anticipating the motorcycle's return. But they didn't reappear. When they eventually merged onto a more populated road, she exhaled extensively. "I believe it's concluded," she stated. Leonardo maintained visual focus on the road, but his voice conveyed caution. "For now," he qualified. Margot looked at him. "You anticipate renewed attempt?" she asked. Leonardo compressed his lips momentarily. "Men of their character dislike defeat," he observed. She inhaled deeply. "Excellent. Precisely the reassurance I sought," she commented sarcastically. Leonardo finally displayed slight amusement. "Merely speculation," he clarified. Margot shook her head but emitted brief laughter. Because somehow, she recognized his accuracy. The vehicle continued along the road, integrating with traffic. But Leonardo still periodically examined the mirror. Because something intuitive suggested this situation remained incomplete. The danger appeared to have passed, but Leonardo understood better than most, some narratives don't conclude so readily. The red Lamborghini approached the luxury hotel entrance smoothly, where the charitable event was occurring. Camera flashes, media representatives at the entrance, elegantly attired guests, all indicated significant proceedings. Margot exhaled with relief. "Well, apparently we've arrived intact," she observed. Leonardo didn't respond immediately. His attention remained focused on the rearview mirror, scanning for suspicious activity. Margot noticed this vigilance. "Leonardo, are you still concerned about those individuals?" she inquired. He finally redirected his gaze from the mirror toward her. "Let's proceed inside." "Don't worry," he stated reassuringly. His tone was calming, but internally, he still sensed incongruity. After several hours at the function, Margot appeared relaxed, engaging in conversation and expressing amusement with various attendees. Leonardo, conversely, required solitary contemplation. He departed from the main hall and utilized the elevator to access the hotel parking facility. The area was quiet, minimally illuminated, housing numerous luxury vehicles. He approached the Ferrari calmly, then halted. His eyes narrowed slightly. Across the vehicle's side, a profound scratch traversed the red paint. This wasn't accidental damage. Someone had intentionally inflicted it. Leonardo returned to the event. Margot remained in the ballroom, consuming wine and expressing amusement at conversation. Upon seeing him, she raised an eyebrow quizzically. "You disappeared. Where were you?" she inquired. Leonardo acquired a champagne glass from passing staff, raised it slightly, and changed conversational direction. "I believe we can celebrate now. The difficulties have concluded," he stated. Margot narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "Are you certain?" she questioned. Leonardo smiled calmly. "Absolutely," he confirmed. They clinked glasses in celebration. And Margot never discovered that on that particular evening, a scratch on a vehicle's side concluded a conflict that might have persisted significantly longer. Because some confrontations aren't resolved with physical aggression or verbal exchange. Some are settled silently, where only those with true understanding of the dynamics recognize the actual victor. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoy this video, and learned a lesson. I would be grateful for your likes. Also don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.